The traveler woke before dawn, their body knowing somehow that this was the day, that the waiting was over, that the next chapter was ready to begin. They lay still for a moment in the darkness of the cave, feeling the familiar stone beneath them, breathing the familiar air, listening to the familiar song of the river in the distance. Everything was the same as it had been every other morning, and everything was different. They rose slowly, their movements deliberate and unhurried despite the anticipation humming in their chest. There was no need to rush. The mountains would wait, the pass would wait, whatever lay beyond would wait. This moment, this last morning in the valley, deserved to be savored, to be honored, to be fully experienced before it became memory. The travelers stepped outside and stood at the entrance of their cave, looking out at the valley one final time. The sky was just beginning to lighten in the east, the first pale hints of dawn touching the horizon, turning the darkness into something softer, something that held the promise of light. The stars were fading one by one, retreating into the brightening blue, their watch ending as the sun prepared to take over. The valley lay before them in the pre-dawn stillness, peaceful and beautiful and utterly unchanged by their presence. The river continued its eternal flow. The grass continued its patient growing. The flowers continued their silent blooming. The valley had existed for thousands of years before the traveler arrived, and it would exist for thousands of years after they left. Their time here was just a moment, a breath, a single note in a symphony that had been playing since the beginning of time. And yet that moment mattered. The traveler knew this with certainty. Every moment mattered. Every breath, every step, every choice, every experience, all of it contributed to the great unfolding of existence. All of it had meaning and purpose and value. They were not insignificant just because they were small. They were not meaningless just because they were temporary. They were part of something vast and beautiful, and their part, however brief, was essential. The traveler gathered their few possessions, the water skin, now full of fresh river water, the blanket, worn soft by use, a small pouch of dried berries and nuts for the journey. They did not need much. They had learned that lesson well during their time in the valley. The less they carried, the freer they were. The fewer possessions they clung to, the more room there was for experience, for wonder, for the unexpected gifts that the journey always offered. They took one last drink from the river, kneeling on the bank where they had knelt so many times before, cupping the cold water in their hands, feeling it flow through their fingers like liquid light. They splashed some on their face, feeling it wake them fully, feeling it bless them for the journey ahead. The river did not know it was saying goodbye. The river simply flowed, as it always had, as it always would. But the traveler knew, and they whispered their thanks to the water, to the valley, to everything that had held them and healed them during their time here. Then they turned and began to walk toward the mountains. The path out of the valley was not difficult to find. It revealed itself naturally, a gentle slope leading upward through meadows and scattered trees, climbing gradually toward the peaks that had always formed the eastern boundary of this hidden world. The traveler had looked at those mountains every day of their stay, had watched the light play across their faces at dawn and dusk, had seen them dusted with snow and wreathed in clouds and standing sharp and clear against blue sky. But they had never approached them. They had never felt ready. Now they were ready. Now each step carried them closer to those distant peaks, closer to the past they had seen in the vision, closer to whatever mystery waited on the other side. The morning unfolded around them as they walked. The sun rose, spilling golden light across the landscape, warming their back, casting their shadow long before them on the path. Birds sang in the trees they passed, their songs bright and complex, full of meanings the traveler could not understand but could appreciate nonetheless. Insects hummed in the grass, going about their small, important lives, building and gathering and reproducing, playing their part in the great web of existence. The traveler walked without hurrying, letting their body find its natural rhythm, letting the path guide them rather than trying to force a pace. They had learned this too in the valley, the wisdom of patience, the power of allowing, the freedom that came from releasing the need to control. The journey would take as long as it took. They would arrive when they arrived. There was no schedule to keep, no deadline to meet, no external pressure demanding speed or efficiency. The terrain changed as they climbed. The lush meadows of the valley floor gave way to rockier ground, scattered with boulders and hardy shrubs that clung to the thin soil with determined roots. The trees grew smaller and more twisted, shaped by winds that blew stronger at this altitude, their forms speaking of resilience, of adaptation, of the will to survive in challenging conditions. The air changed too, growing thinner and cooler as they gained elevation. The traveler found themselves breathing more deeply, their lungs working harder to extract the oxygen they needed. But it was not unpleasant. It was invigorating, actually, this sense of their body responding to challenge, rising to meet the demands of the climb. They felt alive in a way that was different from the peaceful aliveness of the valley, more active, more engaged, more present to the physical reality of their existence. By midday, they had climbed high enough to look back and see the valley spread out below them like a map, like a painting, like a memory already beginning to fade into the soft colors of distance. The river was a silver thread winding through green. The meadows were patches of gold and emerald. The cave where they had slept was invisible, hidden by the folds of the land, but they knew where it was, could feel its location like a warmth in their chest, a place that would always be home even if they never returned. They stopped to rest on a flat rock, eating some of their dried berries, drinking sparingly from their water skin. The sun was warm on their face, the breeze cool on their skin, the silence vast and deep and full of presence. They sat for a long time, just breathing, just being, just appreciating this moment of transition, this pause between the world they were leaving and the world they were entering. The afternoon brought clouds, not threatening, not dark, but soft and white, drifting across the sky like thoughts drifting across a quiet mind. They cast moving shadows on the mountainside, creating patterns of light and dark that shifted and changed, that made the landscape seem alive, breathing, aware. The traveler continued climbing, the path growing steeper now, requiring more attention, more care. They picked their way among rocks and roots, using their hands sometimes to steady themselves, feeling the rough texture of stone beneath their palms, the cool dampness of moss, the surprising warmth of surfaces that had been baking in the sun. They thought about the vision they had seen in the pool, the pass between peaks, the brightness beyond. They did not know what that brightness was. They did not know what they would find when they crossed to the other side. But they trusted that it was something worth finding, something that the journey had been preparing them for. Something that would make sense when they arrived, even if it made no sense now. Trust had become easier during their time in the valley. They had learned to trust the river, which always flowed where it needed to flow. They had learned to trust the seasons, which always changed when they needed to change. They had learned to trust their own body, which knew things their mind did not know, which carried wisdom in its cells and bones and blood that no amount of thinking could access. Now they were learning to trust the unknown, to trust that the path would continue to reveal itself, to trust that they had everything they needed for whatever lay ahead, to trust that the universe was not hostile or indifferent, but fundamentally supportive, fundamentally benevolent, fundamentally on their side. This did not mean that nothing bad would ever happen. The traveler was not naive. They knew that the world contained suffering, that the journey would include difficulties, that not every step would be easy or pleasant. But they also knew that suffering was not the final word, that difficulties were opportunities for growth, that even the hardest steps were taking them somewhere meaningful. The sun began to sink toward the western horizon, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold. The traveler looked for a place to spend the night, somewhere sheltered from the wind, somewhere safe from whatever creatures might roam these heights, somewhere they could rest and restore themselves for the climb ahead. They found it in a hollow between two large boulders, a natural shelter that blocked the wind and retained some of the day's warmth. The ground was covered with a thick layer of dried grass and leaves, soft enough to sleep on, insulating enough to keep out the cold that would come with darkness. The travelers spread their blanket and sat down, leaning against one of the boulders, looking out at the view that spread before them. From this height, they could see for miles in every direction. The valley was far below now, a distant green jewel nestled among the foothills. Beyond it, the land rolled away in waves of forest and meadow, eventually fading into a blue haze at the horizon. And above, the mountains continued to rise, their peaks catching the last light of the setting sun, glowing like beacons, like promises, like prayers made visible. The traveler watched the sunset in silence, letting its beauty fill them, letting its colors speak to something deep inside them that had no words. They felt small and large at the same time, small in the face of such vastness, such grandeur, such overwhelming beauty, large in their capacity to witness it, to appreciate it, to be moved by it. They were a tiny speck of consciousness in an infinite universe, and that consciousness was capable of containing the infinite, of holding it all, of being expanded rather than diminished by the encounter. Night came slowly to the mountains, the light fading by degrees, the colors draining from the sky like water draining from a basin. The first stars appeared while the west was still glowing with the memory of sunset, bright points of light that grew brighter as the darkness deepened, until the sky was filled with them, more stars than the traveler had ever seen, a river of light flowing across the heavens. They lay back on their blanket and looked up at this river of stars, this galaxy they were part of, this vast spiral of light and matter and energy that contained their small planet, their small mountain, their small self. They felt the rotation of the earth beneath them, the slow spin that carried them through space, that created day and night, that had been turning since the planet was born, and would continue turning until it died. The cold came with the darkness, seeping into the hollow, pressing against the traveler's skin. They pulled their blanket tighter around themselves, curling into a ball to conserve warmth, feeling their body respond to the challenge, generating heat, maintaining the delicate balance of temperature that life required. They were grateful for their body, for its wisdom, for its tireless work on their behalf. They had not always been grateful. They had spent years ignoring their body, pushing it, criticizing it, treating it as a servant rather than a partner. But the journey had taught them differently. The journey had taught them that body and mind were not separate, that caring for one meant caring for the other, that the path to peace included the path of physical well-being. Sleep began to pull at them, gentle but insistent, the body's way of saying that the day was done, that it was time to rest. that the work of climbing and thinking and feeling had earned them this reward of unconsciousness. The traveler did not resist. They let their eyes close, let their breathing slow, let their mind release its grip on the day and drift toward the shores of sleep. The last thing they heard was the wind, moving across the mountainside, carrying whispers from far away, from the valley below, from the peaks above, from places they had never been and might never go. The wind was speaking as it always spoke, telling stories to anyone who would listen, singing songs that had no words, offering comfort to all who slept beneath the stars. The traveler listened, and the listening became dreaming, and the dreaming became deep sleep, and the deep sleep held them safe through the long mountain night. You are climbing too, in your own way, on your own mountain. Every day is a step upward, a movement toward something you cannot yet see but can somehow feel, a destination that calls to you even when you do not know its name. The climb is not always easy. There are steep sections and rocky passages, moments when you lose the path and have to find it again, times when you wonder if you have the strength to continue. But you do continue. You always continue. Because something in you knows that the climb is worth it, that the view from the top will justify every difficult step, that the person you are becoming through the climbing is someone you want to be. Rest now on your own mountainside. Find your own hollow between boulders, your own shelter from the wind. Let the day's climbing settle into your muscles, your bones, your cells. Let the effort transform into strength, the challenge transform into growth, the difficulty transform into wisdom. The stars are above you, the same stars that shine on the traveler, the same stars that have shone on every climber who ever lived. You are part of a great company, a vast fellowship of seekers and strivers, of those who heard the mountain's call and answered it, who chose the upward path even when the easy path beckoned. Be proud of yourself for climbing. Be gentle with yourself for needing rest. Be patient with yourself for not yet reaching the top. The mountain does not judge your pace. The mountain only offers itself, step by step, moment by moment, breath by breath. Sleep now, climber. Sleep deeply. Let the mountain hold you as you held the mountain today, with strength and tenderness and infinite patience. Tomorrow the climb continues. But tonight there is only rest, only peace, only the deep healing sleep that the body knows how to find when the mind finally lets go. Sleep well, sleep deeply, sleep in the arms of the mountain that is carrying you home. The traveler woke to a world transformed by frost. Every surface glittered in the early light, coated with a thin layer of ice crystals that caught the first rays of sun and scattered them into tiny rainbows. The grass was stiff and white. The rocks were glazed and gleaming. Even the air itself seemed to sparkle, filled with microscopic particles of ice that drifted and danced like dust motes in a sunbeam. The cold was intense, more intense than anything the traveler had experienced in the valley below. Their breath came out in thick white clouds that hung in the still air before slowly dissipating. Their fingers were numb, their toes were numb, their face felt tight and strange. The skin contracted against the chill. But beneath the discomfort there was something else, a clarity, a sharpness, an aliveness that the cold brought with it, as if the low temperature had stripped away everything unnecessary and left only the essential. The traveler rose stiffly, their joints protesting the cold, their muscles slow to respond. They stamped their feet and swung their arms, generating warmth through movement, feeling the blood begin to flow more freely, feeling the numbness recede and sensation return. They ate a handful of dried berries, the fruit hard and cold but still sweet, still nourishing, still capable of providing the energy they would need for the day's climb. The sun rose higher, and as it rose, the frost began to melt. The glittering white world slowly transformed back into the browns and grays and muted greens of the mountain landscape. Water dripped from rocks and ran in tiny streams down the slope, the ice returning to its liquid form, continuing its endless cycle of freezing and melting, rising and falling, moving through the world in all its many states. The traveler gathered their things and began to climb. The path grew steeper as the morning progressed, the gentle slopes of the lower elevations giving way to more challenging terrain. There were sections where the traveler had to use their hands as well as their feet, pulling themselves up over ledges, finding handholds in cracks and crevices, testing each grip before committing their weight. The rock was cold beneath their palms, rough and textured, offering purchase to those who knew how to find it. The traveler moved slowly, carefully, with full attention to each movement. A fall here could be serious, not fatal perhaps, but certainly injurious, certainly capable of ending the journey before it reached its destination. They could not afford carelessness. They could not afford distraction. Every step required presence, awareness, the complete engagement of body and mind working together toward a common goal. This focus was itself a kind of meditation, they realized. The climb demanded so much attention that there was no room for anything else, no room for worry about the future, no room for regret about the past, no room for the endless commentary of the thinking mind. There was only this rock, this handhold, this placement of foot, this shift of weight, this breath, this moment. The climb was teaching them presence in a way that sitting meditation never had, forcing them into the now through the simple necessity of survival. By midday they had reached a plateau, a flat area of stone that jutted out from the mountainside like a shelf, offering a place to rest and a view that took their breath away. They could see the entire world from here, or so it seemed. The valley was a distant memory far below, barely visible through the haze of distance. The foothills rolled away like waves frozen in stone, and beyond them, stretching to the horizon in every direction, the land spread out in all its variety and beauty, forests and meadows, rivers and lakes, patches of cultivation that spoke of human presence, wild areas that spoke of nature's enduring dominion. The travelers sat on the edge of the plateau, their legs dangling over the drop, and simply looked. They had never been this high before. They had never seen this much of the world at once. The scale of it was overwhelming, humbling, awe-inspiring. They were so small. The world was so vast. And yet here they were, this tiny speck of consciousness, capable of perceiving it all, capable of being moved by it, capable of finding meaning in the immensity. They thought about all the people down there, going about their lives, unaware that someone was watching from this impossible height. The farmers in their fields, the merchants in their shops, the children playing in village squares, the elders sitting in doorways watching the world go by. Each of them was the center of their own universe, the protagonist of their own story, as real and important to themselves as the traveler was to themselves. And yet from up here, they were invisible, indistinguishable, merged into the landscape like drops of water merged into the sea. This was not a depressing thought. It was liberating. The traveler felt the weight of self-importance lifting from their shoulders, the burden of believing that their problems and concerns were uniquely significant. They were one among billions, one story among countless stories, one life among an infinity of lives. And that was okay. That was more than okay. That was beautiful. To be part of something so vast, so varied, so endlessly creative, this was not a diminishment but an expansion, not a loss but a gain. The afternoon brought wind, not the gentle breezes of the valley, but a serious mountain wind, cold and strong, pushing against the traveler as they climbed, trying to peel them off the rock face, testing their grip and their determination. They leaned into it, making themselves small, finding shelter behind boulders when they could, pressing forward when they could not. The wind carried sounds from far away, the cry of a bird, the distant rumble of what might have been thunder or might have been rockfall, the strange whistling that wind makes when it moves through narrow passages and around sharp edges. The traveler listened to these sounds and felt less alone. The mountain was alive in its own way. The wind was alive. The rocks were alive, in the slow, patient way that rocks are alive, changing imperceptibly over millennia, being worn down and built up, participating in the great geological dance that shaped the world. The path led them through a narrow passage between two walls of stone, a corridor carved by water or wind or some ancient geological force. The walls rose high on either side, blocking the wind, creating a sudden stillness that felt almost supernatural after the buffeting of the exposed slopes. The traveler's footsteps echoed in this corridor, bouncing off the stone walls, creating the illusion of company, of other travelers walking alongside them, invisible but present. The light in the corridor was strange, dim and diffuse, filtered through the narrow opening above, casting no shadows, creating a sense of timelessness, of being outside the normal flow of day and night. The traveler moved through this space slowly, reverently, feeling that they were passing through something sacred, something that demanded respect and attention. The walls of the corridor were not smooth. They were carved with patterns, not natural patterns, but deliberate ones, shapes and symbols that had clearly been made by human hands. The traveler stopped and looked more closely, running their fingers over the carved lines, trying to understand what they meant. Some of the symbols were recognizable, spirals and circles, representations of sun and moon, simple figures that might have been humans or gods or something in between. Others were completely foreign, abstract shapes that followed no logic the traveler could discern, that might have been writing, or might have been pure decoration, or might have been something else entirely, something that the modern mind had lost the capacity to understand. Who had carved these symbols? When? Why? The traveler had no answers, only questions. But the questions themselves felt important, felt like a kind of connection across time, a conversation with people who had walked this same path centuries or millennia ago, who had felt moved to leave their mark on these stones, to say, "I was here, I passed this way. I too sought whatever lies beyond." The traveler added their own mark, not a carving. They had no tools for that, but a small stack of stones at the base of the wall. A cairn like the ones they had seen in other wild places. A simple gesture of presence and passage. It felt right to do this. It felt like participating in a tradition that stretched back to the beginning of human time. The impulse to mark our journeys, to leave evidence of our passing, to communicate with those who would come after. The corridor opened onto a wider space, a bowl-shaped depression in the mountainside that was sheltered from the wind and warmed by the afternoon sun. A small pool of water had collected here, fed by a trickle that ran down the rock face, clear and cold and inviting. The traveler knelt and drank deeply, feeling the water cool their throat, feeling it spread through their body, replenishing what the climb had depleted. They refilled their water skin and sat beside the pool, resting, recovering, letting their muscles relax and their breathing slow. The sun was warm on their face, the stone was warm beneath them, the air was still and peaceful. They could have stayed here for hours, for days, for the rest of their life. The temptation to stop, to go no further, to make this sheltered bowl their new home was strong. But they knew they could not stay. The vision in the pool had shown them something beyond the pass, something that was waiting for them, something that they needed to find. This beautiful place was not the destination. It was another waypoint, another resting place, another gift from the journey to sustain them for what lay ahead. The traveler thought about the nature of rest, how it was not the opposite of movement but its complement, how the body needed both, the exertion and the recovery, the effort and the ease, the climbing and the sitting still. They had spent so much of their old life in constant motion, constant doing, constant striving. They had forgotten how to rest, how to simply be, how to let the body and mind recover from the demands placed upon them. The valley had taught them this. The valley had been one long lesson in the art of rest, in the wisdom of allowing, in the power of doing nothing. And now, as they climbed toward whatever awaited them, they were learning to integrate that lesson into a life that also included effort, challenge, forward movement, rest and motion, stillness and action, being and doing. These were not opposites to be chosen between, but partners to be balanced, aspects of a whole life that included both. The sun began to sink toward the horizon, and the traveler knew they needed to find shelter for the night. They looked around the bowl, assessing its possibilities. The walls would block the wind. The stone had absorbed the day's warmth and would release it slowly through the night. The pool provided water. It was not a bad place to sleep, not bad at all. They found a spot where the curve of the wall created a natural alcove, a space just large enough for their body, protected on 3 sides by stone. They spread their blanket and lay down, looking up at the sky, watching the light change as the sun continued its descent. The first stars appeared while the sky was still blue, bright points of light that grew brighter as the blue deepened into purple and then into black. The traveler watched them emerge, one by one, feeling the familiar comfort of their presence. The reminder that some things remained constant, even as everything else changed. Sleep came more easily than they expected, the exhaustion of the climb pulling them down into unconsciousness like a stone sinking into deep water. They did not dream, or if they did not remember. There was only darkness, only rest, only the deep repair that the body performs when the mind finally releases its grip. They woke once in the night, briefly, to the sound of something moving in the darkness. An animal, perhaps, come to drink from the pool, or the wind finding its way into the sheltered bowl, or nothing at all, just the random firing of neurons in a sleeping brain, creating sounds that had no source in the external world. The traveler lay still and listened, their heart beating faster, their senses straining to identify the sound. But there was nothing more, only silence, only the vast quiet of the mountain night, only the stars wheeling slowly overhead in their eternal dance. They closed their eyes and let sleep take them again, trusting the mountain to keep them safe, trusting the journey to continue in the morning, trusting that whatever had made the sound, if anything had made the sound, was not a threat, but simply another traveler, another being making its way through the world, another life unfolding according to its own mysterious logic. The night passed, the stars moved, the cold deepened and then began to ease as the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky, and the traveler slept on, gathering strength for the climb ahead, for the pass that was now close, for the brightness that waited on the other side. The stone holds you tonight, as it has held countless travelers before you. Feel its solidity beneath you, its patience, its enduring presence. The stone does not hurry. The stone does not worry. The stone simply is, moment after moment, age after age. offering itself to all who need its support. Let yourself be held by this ancient patience. Let yourself rest in the knowledge that the mountain has been here for millions of years and will be here for millions more. Your concerns, your worries, your plans and fears, they are real, they matter, but they are also small against this vastness, brief against this permanence. This is not meant to diminish you, it is meant to free you. When you remember how small your problems are against the scale of geological time, they become easier to bear. When you remember that the mountain does not judge your pace or your progress, you can release the judgment you place on yourself. Rest now in the shelter of stone. Let the mountain hold you as a mother holds a child, with strength and tenderness and infinite patience. You have climbed well today. You have faced challenges and overcome them. You have earned this rest, this peace, this deep and healing sleep. Tomorrow the path continues upward. Tomorrow you will climb again, step by step, breath by breath, moving toward whatever waits for you at the top. But tomorrow is tomorrow. Tonight is tonight. And tonight, there is nothing to do but rest. Feel your body sinking into the stone, into the earth, into the deep support that is always there beneath you. Feel your breath slowing, deepening, becoming as steady and rhythmic as the pulse of the planet itself. Feel your mind releasing its grip on thoughts, letting them drift away like clouds across a mountain sky. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. Sleep now, traveler. Sleep deeply. Sleep well. The mountain watches over you. The stars watch over you. The whole universe watches over you with eyes of infinite love. Rest now. Rest completely. Rest in the arms of the stone that has been waiting for you since the beginning of time. The morning of the final ascent arrived with a clarity that felt like prophecy. The sky was a blue so deep and pure that it seemed to vibrate, to hum with a frequency just beyond the range of human hearing. There were no clouds, no haze, no softening of the light, only the sun rising over distant peaks, casting long shadows across the mountainside, illuminating every detail with merciless precision. The traveler woke feeling different, lighter somehow, as if the night's sleep had burned away something they no longer needed, some residue of doubt or fear or hesitation that had been weighing them down without their knowledge. They rose and stretched, feeling their body respond with surprising ease, the stiffness of previous mornings absent, replaced by a fluid readiness that seemed to anticipate the climb ahead. They ate the last of their dried berries, savoring each one, knowing that they would need to find food on the other side of the pass or go hungry. They drank deeply from the pool, then filled their water skin to the brim. They folded their blanket carefully, tucking it into the small pack they carried, making sure everything was secure for the climb ahead. Then they looked up at the path that remained. The pass was visible from here, a notch in the ridge line above, a gap between two peaks where the sky showed through like a window into another world. It did not look far, perhaps a few hours of climbing, perhaps less. But the traveler had learned not to trust appearances in the mountains. Distances were deceptive. What looked close could take all day to reach. What looked easy could prove treacherous. They began to climb. The terrain was challenging from the start, loose scree that shifted beneath their feet, requiring constant adjustment, constant attention to balance. Each step sent small stones skittering downward, creating miniature avalanches that whispered and clattered as they fell. The traveler moved carefully, testing each foothold before committing their weight, using their hands for stability, keeping their center of gravity low. The sun climbed with them, rising higher in the sky, growing warmer as the morning progressed. The traveler began to sweat despite the altitude, their body working hard, generating heat that had nowhere to go in the still mountain air. They paused frequently to rest, to drink, to let their racing hearts slow to something more sustainable. During one of these pauses, they looked back at the path they had traveled. The sheltered bowl where they had slept was far below now, a small depression in the vast mountainside, barely visible. Beyond it, the corridor of carved stone. Beyond that, the plateau where they had sat and contemplated the world. Beyond that, the slopes and ridges and valleys that stretched all the way back to the beginning, to the village they had left so long ago, to the life they had lived before the journey began. It all seemed very far away, not just in distance but in time, in feeling, in reality. The person who had lived that life, who had walked those streets, who had slept in that house with the blue door, that person felt like a stranger now. A character in a story they had once read, someone they knew about but did not know. The journey had changed them so completely that they could barely recognize their former self. Was this good? Was this what they had wanted? The traveler was not sure. They had not known what they wanted when they left. They had only known that they needed to go, that staying was no longer possible, that something was calling them toward the unknown. And they had answered that call, step by step, day by day, until they found themselves here, on the side of a mountain, climbing toward a pass that led to a mystery they could not name. They turned back to the climb and continued upward. The final approach to the pass was the steepest yet. The scree gave way to solid rock, a wall of stone that rose almost vertically, broken only by cracks and ledges that offered precarious handholds and footholds. The traveler climbed slowly, methodically, treating each movement as a problem to be solved, a puzzle of weight and balance and friction. Their world narrowed to the immediate, the texture of the rock beneath their fingers, the placement of their feet, the rhythm of their breathing. There was no room for thought, no space for anything but the pure physical reality of the climb. They became an animal, a creature of instinct and sensation, moving upward through some ancient imperative that predated language, that predated consciousness itself. Time lost meaning. There was only the rock, only the climb, only the endless upward movement that seemed to have no beginning and no end. The traveler's muscles burned, their lungs ached, their fingers grew raw from gripping stone. But they did not stop. They could not stop. The pass was above them, close now, so close they could almost touch it, and nothing would prevent them from reaching it. And then, suddenly, they were there. The traveler pulled themselves over the final ledge and found themselves standing in the pass itself, a narrow corridor of stone with walls rising on either side and the sky opening above. The wind hit them immediately, a fierce, cold wind that seemed to come from everywhere at once, that pushed against them with almost physical force, that carried on its scents and sounds from the world beyond. They stood in the wind and looked. The view that opened before them was unlike anything they had ever seen, unlike anything they had imagined, unlike anything that words could adequately describe. The mountains fell away on the other side of the pass in a cascade of ridges and valleys, each one lower than the last, descending toward a vast plain that stretched to the horizon. But it was not the geography that took their breath away. It was the light. The plain was filled with light. Not sunlight exactly, though the sun was shining. Something else. Something that seemed to rise from the land itself, a golden luminescence that suffused everything, that made the distant fields and forests glow as if lit from within. The light was warm and soft and somehow alive, pulsing gently like a heartbeat, like breath, like the rhythm of existence itself. The travelers stood in the pass and stared at this light, feeling it wash over them even from this distance, feeling it enter them through their eyes and skin and breath. They understood now what the vision in the pool had shown them. They understood what had been calling them all along. This light, this radiance, this mystery that had no name but that they recognized nonetheless, that they had always known, that they had been seeking without knowing they were seeking it. Tears came to their eyes, not tears of sadness, but of recognition, of homecoming, of a joy so deep it could not be contained. They had found it. After all the walking, all the climbing, all the days and nights of journey, they had found what they were looking for, or rather, they had found the place where what they were looking for could be found. The journey was not over. In some ways, it was just beginning. But they had reached the threshold. They had arrived at the door. The traveler sat down in the pass, their back against the stone wall, sheltered slightly from the wind. They needed to rest before beginning the descent. They needed to process what they were seeing, what they were feeling, what they now understood. The light on the plain below continued to pulse and glow, patient and eternal, waiting for them to come down, waiting to receive them, waiting to reveal whatever secrets it held. There was no hurry. The light had been there for ages, would be there for ages more. It was not going anywhere. It would wait. The traveler thought about everything that had led them to this moment. The restlessness in the village, the decision to leave, the edge of the known world, the silver forest, the ancient grove, the hidden valley with its river and waterfall and meadow of whispers, the climb through stone and wind and cold. Every step had been necessary. Every experience had been preparation. They could not have arrived here any other way. And yet, looking back, they could see that they had always been heading here. Even before they knew this place existed, even before they knew they were searching for anything, some part of them had been oriented toward this light, this radiance, this mystery. The journey had not created the destination. The destination had created the journey, had called it into being, had drawn them forward step by step until they stood where they now stood. This was a strange thought, a thought that bent the mind in unfamiliar directions. The future creating the past, the destination creating the journey, effect preceding cause, and yet it felt true. It felt like the deepest truth they had ever encountered, a truth that explained everything, that made sense of everything, that revealed the hidden order beneath the apparent chaos of existence. The traveler sat with this truth, letting it settle into them, letting it become part of their understanding. They did not try to analyze it or explain it or fit it into any framework they already possessed. They simply received it, as they had received so many gifts on this journey, with gratitude and wonder and an open heart. The sun moved across the sky, beginning its afternoon descent. The shadows in the pass lengthened and shifted. The wind continued to blow, cold and clean, carrying the scent of the radiant plain below. The traveler rested, recovered, prepared themselves for the descent that would come tomorrow. Tonight they would sleep here in the pass, in this threshold between worlds, in this liminal space where the old life ended and the new life began. Tomorrow, they would begin the journey down, toward the light, toward whatever awaited them in that luminous land. But tonight was for rest. Tonight was for integration. Tonight was for honoring the journey that had brought them here and preparing for the journey that lay ahead. The sunset from the pass was spectacular, the sky erupting in colors that seemed impossible. Oranges and pinks and purples that deepened and intensified until the whole world seemed to be on fire. The traveler watched in silence, feeling the beauty of it enter them, feeling it fill the spaces that the climb had emptied. When the colors finally faded and the stars began to emerge, the traveler wrapped themselves in their blanket and lay down on the stone floor of the pass. The wind had died with the sun, leaving a stillness that felt sacred, that felt like the pause between breaths, the silence between heartbeats. They looked up at the stars, the same stars that had watched over them every night of the journey, the same stars that had shone on the valley and the mountain, and every step in between. They felt connected to those stars, part of the same vast system, the same cosmic dance. They were made of star stuff, they knew. The atoms in their body had been forged in stellar furnaces billions of years ago, had traveled across unimaginable distances, had combined and recombined in countless forms before coming together to create this particular configuration of matter and energy that called itself a traveler, that had climbed a mountain, that now lay in a pass looking up at its own origins. This thought did not make them feel small, it made them feel infinite. They were not separate from the universe. They were the universe, experiencing itself, knowing itself, marveling at itself. The stars looking up at the stars. The cosmos contemplating the cosmos. The mystery encountering the mystery. Sleep came slowly, gently, like a tide coming in. The traveler let it take them, let it carry them away from waking consciousness into the deeper waters of dream. They did not resist. They did not cling to wakefulness. They simply let go, trusting the night to hold them, trusting the dawn to return them, trusting the journey to continue in whatever form it needed to take. You stand at your own pass tonight, your own threshold between what was and what will be. Perhaps you cannot see it clearly. Perhaps you do not know its name, but it is there waiting for you, as it has always been waiting, as it will always wait. The light that the traveler saw, that golden radiance filling the plain below, it exists for you too. It is not somewhere far away, not on the other side of mountains you must climb. It is here now, in this very moment, shining in the darkness behind your closed eyes, glowing in the silence between your thoughts. You do not have to journey to find it. You only have to stop, to rest, to let go of the endless seeking and simply be present to what is already here. The light is not the destination. The light is the ground you stand on, the air you breathe, the awareness that knows you are aware. Rest now in this knowing. Let it hold you as the past holds the traveler, as the night holds the stars, as existence holds everything that exists. You are safe in this holding. You are loved in this holding. You are home in this holding, even if you have never felt at home before. The journey continues tomorrow. There are always more steps to take, more paths to walk, more mysteries to explore. But tonight, there is only this breath, this heartbeat, this moment of perfect stillness in which everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep now, beloved traveler. Sleep in the pass between worlds. Sleep in the threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. Sleep in the arms of the light that has been calling you home since before you were born. And know that when you wake, the light will still be there. It will always be there. It is what you are made of. It is what you are. Rest now. Rest completely. Rest in the radiance that never fades, the love that never ends, the peace that passes all understanding. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. Sleep in light. The traveler woke to light. Not the gradual brightening of ordinary dawn, but something more immediate, more present, as if the sun had risen directly into the pass, as if the day had begun not in the east, but right here, right where they lay. They opened their eyes and saw the sky above them glowing with that same golden luminescence they had witnessed the day before. The radiance from the plain below, somehow reflected or amplified by the morning air. They sat up slowly, their bodies stiff from sleeping on stone, but their spirits surprisingly buoyant, lifted by the light, energized by the knowledge of what lay ahead. Today they would begin the descent. Today they would walk toward that radiance, into that mystery, toward whatever awaited them in the luminous land below. The traveler ate nothing. They had nothing left to eat, but they did not feel hungry. The light seemed to nourish them in some way they could not explain, filling them with a warmth and energy that had nothing to do with food. They drank the last of their water, knowing they would need to find more on the descent, trusting that water would be there when they needed it, as everything else had been there when they needed it throughout this journey. They stood and looked out over the plain one more time, letting the view fill them, letting the light wash over them. Then they began to walk. The descent was easier than the ascent, at least physically. The path down the other side of the mountain was gentler, a series of switchbacks carved into the slope, clearly made by human hands at some point in the distant past. The traveler wondered who had made this path, who had climbed this mountain before them, who had stood in that pass and seen what they had seen. There was no way to know. The path offered no answers, only passage. As they descended, the light grew stronger. What had seemed like a distant glow from the past became more immediate, more tangible, until the traveler felt they were walking through light rather than toward it. The air itself seemed luminous, filled with golden particles that drifted and swirled like dust motes in a sunbeam, but softer, gentler, more alive. The landscape changed as they descended. The bare rock of the upper slopes gave way to hardy grasses, then to shrubs, then to small trees that grew larger and more numerous as the altitude decreased. But these were not ordinary plants. They seemed to glow from within, their leaves and stems suffused with the same golden light that filled the air, as if they were not merely reflecting the radiance but generating it, participating in it, contributing their own small flames to the great fire of illumination. The traveler walked through this glowing forest in a state of wonder that bordered on disbelief. They had seen many beautiful things on their journey, the silver-barked trees, the ancient grove, the meadow of whispers, but nothing had prepared them for this. This was beauty of a different order, beauty that seemed to transcend the physical, that pointed toward something beyond itself, that was not just pleasant to look at, but meaningful in some way they could not articulate. They stopped frequently, not from tiredness, but from the need to simply stand and absorb what they were seeing. Each tree, each flower, each blade of grass seemed worthy of hours of contemplation. The light played across surfaces in ways that revealed hidden depths, hidden patterns, hidden connections between things that had seemed separate. The traveler felt their perception shifting, expanding, becoming capable of seeing what they had never been able to see before. By midday, they had descended into a valley, not like the hidden valley where they had spent so many peaceful days, but something different, something more. The valley was filled with the golden light, so thick and rich that it was almost like walking through honey, through amber, through liquid gold. The traveler moved slowly, not because the terrain was difficult, but because the light itself seemed to slow them, to invite them to linger, to savor each moment rather than rushing toward the next. A stream ran through the valley, its water clear and cold and somehow also luminous, carrying the light within it, spreading it wherever it flowed. The traveler knelt beside this stream and drank deeply, feeling the water enter them, feeling the light enter them, feeling something shift and open in the deepest parts of their being. The water tasted like nothing they had ever tasted before. It was not just refreshing but transformative, not just satisfying but revelatory. With each swallow they felt more awake, more alive, more present to the reality of their own existence. The boundaries of their self seemed to soften and expand, until they were not sure where they ended and the stream began, where the stream ended and the light began, where the light ended and the universe began. They sat beside the stream for a long time, letting this expansion continue, letting the boundaries dissolve further, letting themselves become part of the light that surrounded them. They were not losing themselves, they realized. They were finding themselves. The small, separate self they had always believed themselves to be was not disappearing, but being revealed as part of something larger, something vaster, something that included everything and excluded nothing. This was what they had been seeking. This was what the journey had been leading toward. Not a place, but a state of being. Not a destination, but a transformation. Not something to find, but something to become. The traveler wept, not from sadness, not from joy, but from something that included both and transcended both. A release of everything they had been holding, a surrender of everything they had been clinging to, a letting go so complete that there was nothing left to let go of. And in that emptiness, that openness, that vast spaciousness where the self had been, something else arose. Something that had always been there but had been hidden by the noise of thought, the clutter of identity, the constant activity of the seeking mind. A presence, a peace, a love so vast and unconditional that it could not be contained by any heart, any mind, any self. The traveler sat by the stream and let this presence fill them. Let this peace settle into them. Let this love become them. They did not know how long they sat there. Time had lost all meaning. There was only this light, this water, this breath, this moment of perfect completion. When they finally rose, the sun was beginning to set, painting the luminous valley in shades of gold and rose and deepening amber. The traveler walked on, following the stream, moving deeper into the radiant land. No longer seeking anything, no longer striving toward any goal, simply walking because walking was what there was to do, simply being because being was what there was to be. The valley opened onto a wider plain, and on this plain, the traveler saw something that made them stop and stare. Buildings. Not ruins, not abandoned structures, but living buildings, homes and halls and towers that glowed with the same golden light that filled everything else, that seemed to be made of light itself, solidified into form, crystallized into architecture. And among these buildings, moving through the golden streets, going about their luminous lives, people, or beings that looked like people. Figures that glowed as the buildings glowed, as the trees glowed, as everything in this land glowed with the inner light that was the essence of this place. The traveler stood at the edge of this luminous city and felt no fear, no hesitation, no uncertainty. They had come so far. They had given up so much. They had been transformed so completely that there was nothing left to protect, nothing left to defend, nothing left to lose. They were ready for whatever came next. They walked toward the city, toward the glowing figures, toward the next chapter of a journey that they now understood would never end, that had never really begun. That was simply the eternal unfolding of existence, experiencing itself, knowing itself, loving itself through the infinite forms it took. The light welcomed them. The city welcomed them. The beings who dwelt there turned toward them with faces full of recognition, full of joy, full of the same love that the traveler now felt flowing through their own being. They had come home, not to a place they had ever been before, but to a place they had always belonged. Not to somewhere new, but to somewhere eternal. Not to the end of the journey, but to the beginning of everything. The light that welcomed the traveler welcomes you too. It has always been welcoming you. Every moment of your life, every breath you have taken, every step you have walked, all of it has been the light calling you home, guiding you toward this recognition, this remembering, this return to what you have always been. You do not have to climb mountains to find it. You do not have to cross passes or descend into luminous valleys. The light is here now, in this very room, in this very moment, in the very awareness that is reading these words. It is closer than close, nearer than near, more intimate than your own heartbeat. Rest now in this light. Let it fill you as it filled the traveler. Let it dissolve the boundaries you have built, the walls you have erected, the defenses you have maintained against a world you believed was separate from you. There is no separation. There never was. There is only light, only love, only the one presence appearing as many, the one awareness knowing itself through countless forms. You are that awareness. You are that light. You are that love. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but actually, literally, truly. This is not something you need to achieve or attain or become. It is what you already are, what you have always been, what you will always be. Sleep now in this knowing. Let it hold you through the night. Let it carry you through your dreams. Let it be there when you wake. The light does not come and go. The light does not rise and set. The light is constant, eternal, unchanging, the ground of all being, the source of all existence, the home to which all travelers return. Rest in the light. Rest as the light. Rest and know that you are home. Sleep well, beloved one. Sleep in radiance. Sleep in peace. The traveler walked through the streets of the luminous city, and with each step they understood more. The understanding did not come through thought or analysis, but through direct perception, through immediate knowing, through a kind of seeing that was also a kind of being. They did not learn about the city. They became part of it, and in becoming part of it, they knew it from the inside, as one knows one's own body, one's own breath, one's own heartbeat. The buildings were not made of stone or wood or any material the traveler recognized. They were made of light itself, condensed and shaped into form, solid enough to touch yet somehow also transparent, revealing depths within depths, layers within layers, as if each structure contained infinite space within its finite walls. The traveler reached out and touched one of these walls, feeling it warm and smooth beneath their fingers, feeling it pulse gently with the same rhythm that pulsed through everything in this place. The beings who dwelt in the city moved around them with a grace that was almost musical, their movements flowing into one another like notes in a melody, like steps in a dance. They did not speak, at least not in any way the traveler could hear, but communication happened nonetheless. A meeting of eyes, a gesture of welcome, a smile that conveyed more than words ever could. The traveler felt known by these beings, seen in a way they had never been seen before, accepted completely, loved unconditionally. One of the beings approached them, taller than the others, with eyes that seemed to contain galaxies, with a presence that was both infinitely powerful and infinitely gentle. This being did not speak, but the traveler heard them nonetheless, heard them in the space behind thought, in the silence beneath words. "You have come far," the being said, or conveyed, or simply was. "You have given up much. You have become what you needed to become to arrive here." The traveler did not know how to respond. They had no words for what they were experiencing, no framework for understanding what was happening. They simply stood in the presence of this radiant being and let themselves be seen, let themselves be known, let themselves be loved. "This is not the end," the being continued. "There is no end. There is only deepening, only expansion, only the endless unfolding of what you truly are. You have taken the first step. There are infinite steps remaining, and each one is as beautiful as this one, as meaningful as this one, as full of wonder as this one. The traveler felt tears on their face again, tears that seemed to be made of light, that fell and dissolved into the luminous ground beneath their feet. They understood what the being was saying, not with their mind, but with their whole being. The journey was not over. The journey would never be over. And that was not a burden, but a gift, not a sentence, but a blessing. Rest now, the being said, you have earned rest. Tomorrow and all the tomorrows after, the journey continues, but tonight, rest. Let the city hold you. Let the light restore you. Let yourself be cared for as you have never allowed yourself to be cared for before. The being gestured toward one of the luminous buildings, and the traveler understood that this was where they would stay, where they would sleep, where they would begin the process of integration that would allow them to go deeper into this new reality. They walked toward the building, feeling the light support each step, feeling the city welcome them, feeling themselves becoming part of something vast and beautiful and eternal. The interior of the building was even more wondrous than the exterior. The walls glowed with a soft, warm light that seemed to respond to the traveler's presence, brightening slightly as they entered, shifting in color to match their emotional state. The space was simple, a room with a bed, a window looking out over the luminous city, a small table with a pitcher of water that glowed like liquid gold. The traveler drank from the pitcher, feeling the same transformative quality they had experienced at the stream, feeling the light enter them and become part of them. They were not hungry, had not been hungry since entering this land, as if the light itself provided all the nourishment they needed. They lay down on the bed, which was softer than anything they had ever felt, which seemed to mold itself to their body, which held them with a tenderness that brought more tears to their eyes. They had not known they needed to be held like this. They had not known how much they had been carrying, how tired they had been, how desperately they had needed rest. The ceiling above them was transparent, or perhaps it simply was not there, and through it they could see the sky. Not the dark sky of night, but a sky filled with light, with colors that shifted and flowed like aurora, with patterns that seemed to tell stories, to convey meanings, to communicate truths that bypassed the mind entirely and spoke directly to the soul. The traveler watched these patterns and felt themselves dissolving into them, becoming part of the light show above, becoming part of the city around them, becoming part of the vast consciousness that permeated everything in this place. The boundaries of self, already softened by the journey, now seemed to disappear entirely, leaving only awareness, only presence, only the infinite expanse of being that had no center and no edge. This was not frightening. This was not disorienting. This was coming home. This was remembering what they had always known but had forgotten. This was waking up from a dream of separation into the reality of unity, the truth of connection, the fact of love. Sleep came, but it was not like ordinary sleep. It was more like a deepening, a settling, a sinking into layers of consciousness that the traveler had never accessed before. They dreamed, but the dreams were not fantasies or fears or random firings of neurons. They were teachings, transmissions, direct downloads of understanding that would take years to fully integrate. They dreamed of the history of the luminous city, of the beings who had built it, of the purpose it served in the great unfolding of existence. They dreamed of other travelers who had made this journey, other seekers who had found their way to this place, other souls who had been transformed by the light and had gone on to carry that light back into the world. They dreamed of their own past, seeing it now from a higher perspective, understanding how every experience had been necessary, how every pain had been a teaching, how every joy had been a glimpse of the truth they were now living. They saw the village they had left, saw the people they had loved, saw the life they had lived, and they felt only gratitude, only compassion, only love for all of it, even the parts that had seemed difficult or meaningless at the time. They dreamed of the future, though future was not quite the right word, since time in this place did not move in the linear way they were accustomed to. They saw possibilities, potentials, paths that branched and merged and led to outcomes beyond imagining. They saw that nothing was fixed, that everything was fluid, that the future was not something that happened to them, but something they participated in creating through every choice, every thought, every breath. And beneath all these dreams, holding them all, was the light, the constant, unchanging, eternal light that was the ground of all being, the source of all existence, the love that moved the sun and other stars. The traveler rested in this light, was held by this light, was made of this light, and knew with a certainty that would never waver that this was what they truly were, what everyone truly was, what everything truly was. They woke to the sound of singing, not human singing, not any kind of singing they had heard before, but a sound that was unmistakably music, unmistakably voice, unmistakably beautiful. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the sky, from the very air itself, a chorus of tones that wove together into harmonies of impossible complexity and perfect simplicity. The traveler rose and went to the window, looking out over the city. The beings were gathered in the central square, their forms arranged in patterns that shifted and flowed like the patterns in the sky. Their voices, if voices they were, raised in this song that was also a prayer, also a celebration, also a simple expression of the joy of existence. The traveler felt the song enter them, felt it resonate in their chest, felt it vibrate in their bones. They did not know the words, if there were words. They did not know the melody, if there was a melody. But they knew the meaning. They knew the feeling. They knew the truth that the song was expressing, the truth of unity, of love, of the infinite preciousness of every moment, every being, every breath. They left the building and walked toward the square, drawn by the music, drawn by the light, drawn by the irresistible pull of belonging. The beings made space for them, welcomed them into the pattern, included them in the song, and the traveler opened their mouth and sang too, not knowing what sounds would come out, not caring, simply letting the music move through them, simply adding their voice to the chorus, simply participating in the great celebration of existence that was always happening, everywhere, in every moment. The song went on, timeless and eternal, and the traveler sang with it, part of it, one with it, home at last in the city of radiance, in the land of light, in the heart of the mystery that had called them across mountains and valleys and years of seeking. They had arrived, they were home, and the journey was just beginning. The song the traveler heard is singing now, in this moment, in the silence beneath these words. It has always been singing. It will always be singing. It is the song of existence itself, the music of the spheres, the voice of the universe celebrating its own being. You are part of this song. Your breath is part of it. Your heartbeat is part of it. Every thought you think, every feeling you feel, every dream you dream, all of it is a note in the infinite symphony, a thread in the endless tapestry, a word in the story that has no beginning and no end. Listen now. Can you hear it? Beneath the noise of the mind, beneath the chatter of thought, beneath the endless commentary that fills your waking hours, there is a silence. And in that silence there is a sound. And that sound is the song. That sound is the music. That sound is the voice of love calling you home. Rest now in that song. Let it sing you to sleep. Let it carry you through the night on waves of harmony and peace. You do not have to do anything. You do not have to be anything. You only have to listen. You only have to rest. You only have to let the music hold you as it has always held you, as it will always hold you, as it is holding you right now. Sleep, beloved singer. Sleep, precious note in the infinite song. Sleep and know that you are music, that you are harmony, that you are the very sound of love made manifest in form. The song continues. The song never ends, and you are part of it now and forever. Sleeping and waking, living and dying and living again. Rest in the music. Rest is the music. Rest and let the song sing you home. In the days that followed, if days they could be called, for time in the luminous city moved in ways the traveler was still learning to understand, they explored their new home. They walked the glowing streets, they entered the radiant buildings, they sat in the squares and watched the beings go about their mysterious activities, and slowly, gradually, they began to understand. The city was not just a place, it was a teaching. Every building, every street, every pattern of light and shadow was designed to convey something, to transmit something, to help those who dwelt there deepen their understanding of the nature of existence. The traveler did not have to study or strive or effort to learn. They simply had to be present, to pay attention, to let the teachings enter them through their eyes and ears and skin and breath. One morning, or what felt like morning, though the light in this place never fully dimmed, the tall being who had first welcomed them appeared at their door. Without words, they conveyed an invitation, a suggestion, a gentle guidance toward somewhere the traveler had not yet been. They followed the being through streets they had not walked before, past buildings they had not entered, toward the edge of the city where the structures gave way to open land. And there, spreading out before them in all directions, was a garden. But garden was too small a word for what they saw. This was a landscape of living light, a terrain of growing radiance, a world within a world where plants and flowers and trees of impossible beauty flourished in soil that glowed like embers, under a sky that pulsed like a heartbeat. The traveler stepped into the garden and felt immediately that this place was different from the rest of the city. The energy here was softer, more intimate, more personal. The city was vast and cosmic, concerned with truths that spanned universes. The garden was small and tender, concerned with truths that lived in the heart. This is the garden of remembering, the tall being conveyed. Here you will remember what you have forgotten. Here you will find what you have lost. Here you will meet who you truly are. The being did not follow them into the garden. This was a journey the traveler had to make alone. They walked forward, feeling the luminous grass soft beneath their feet, feeling the warm air caress their skin, feeling the presence of something waiting for them, something that had been waiting for a very long time. The garden was arranged in concentric circles, each ring containing different plants, different flowers, different qualities of light. The traveler walked through these rings slowly, feeling each one work on them in different ways, feeling memories rise to the surface of their consciousness like bubbles rising through water. In the first ring, they remembered their childhood, not the facts of it, not the events, but the feeling of it, the wonder, the openness, the sense that anything was possible, that the world was magical, that they were loved and safe and held. They had forgotten this feeling, had buried it under years of disappointment and disillusionment, had come to believe that it was naive, childish, something to be outgrown. But here in the garden, they felt it again, fresh and alive, and they understood that it had never been naive. It had been true. The world was magical. They were loved. They had simply forgotten. In the second ring, they remembered their adolescence, the confusion, the longing, the desperate search for identity and meaning. They had made so many mistakes during those years, had caused pain to themselves and others, had wandered down paths that led nowhere. But here, in the garden, they saw those mistakes differently. They saw them as necessary explorations, as essential experiments, as the only way they could have learned what they needed to learn. They forgave themselves for those years. They thanked themselves for surviving them. In the third ring, they remembered their adult life, the striving, the achieving, the endless pursuit of goals that always receded as they approached. They had accomplished things, yes. They had built a life, made a living, earned respect. But they had also lost something along the way, the wonder of childhood, the passion of adolescence, the sense that life was an adventure rather than a problem to be solved. Here in the garden, they mourned what they had lost, and in the morning, they began to find it again. In the fourth ring, they remembered the journey, the leaving, the walking, the endless days and nights of movement toward something they could not name. They saw now how necessary it had been, how they could not have arrived here any other way, how every step had been guided, every turn had been purposeful, every difficulty had been a gift in disguise. They felt gratitude for the journey, for the courage it had required, for the faith it had demanded. And in the fifth ring, the innermost circle, they remembered something else, something older than childhood, older than this life, older than time itself. They remembered who they were before they were born, who they would be after they died, who they had always been beneath the costumes and masks and roles they had played. They remembered that they were light, that they had always been light, that they had chosen to forget, to take on form, to experience limitation and separation and the long journey home. They had chosen this life, this body, this particular path through existence, not as a punishment or a test, but as an adventure, an exploration, a way of knowing themselves more deeply through the experience of forgetting and remembering. The traveler stood in the center of the garden, in the heart of the innermost ring, and wept. They wept for the beauty of it, for the perfection of it, for the love that had designed such an intricate and meaningful journey. They wept for all the years of confusion, of seeking, of believing they were lost when they had never been lost at all. They wept for the joy of remembering, of coming home, of finally understanding what they had always known but had forgotten. The tall being was waiting for them when they emerged from the garden. They did not need to ask what the traveler had experienced. They knew. They had walked this same path themselves long ago in a time before time. Every being in the city had walked it. Every being who would ever come here would walk it. It was the essential journey, the necessary passage, the doorway through which all must pass to fully arrive. You understand now the being conveyed. You know who you are. You know why you came. You know what you are here to do. The traveler nodded, though they could not have put any of it into words. The understanding was too vast, too deep, too complete for language. It lived in their cells, in their bones, in the very structure of their being. They did not have to think about it or remember it or try to hold on to it. It was simply what they were now. It was simply the truth. "There's one more thing," the being said. "One more gift the garden offers to those who walk its paths." They gestured toward a small structure at the edge of the garden, a pavilion made of the same luminous material as the buildings in the city, but smaller, more intimate, more personal. The traveler walked toward it, feeling a pull they could not explain, a sense that something important waited for them there. Inside the pavilion was a pool, not large, just a few feet across, but deep, deeper than seemed possible, deeper than the eye could follow, as if it went down forever, as if it contained all the water in all the worlds. "Look," the being said. "See." The traveler knelt beside the pool and looked into its depths. At first they saw only light, the same golden radiance that filled everything in this place. But then the light began to shift, to coalesce, to form shapes and images that rose from the depths like dreams rising from sleep. They saw faces, familiar faces, the faces of everyone they had ever loved, everyone they had ever known, everyone whose life had touched theirs in any way. They saw their family, their friends, the strangers who had shown them kindness, the enemies who had taught them hard lessons. They saw the elder in the village who had spoken of paths where time moved differently. They saw the doe in the silver forest. They saw every being they had encountered on their journey, human and animal and plant and stone. And they understood. All of these beings were part of them. All of these lives were connected to their life. The separation they had felt, the loneliness, the sense of being a single isolated self moving through a world of other isolated selves. It had all been illusion. They were not separate. They had never been separate. They were part of a vast web of connection that included everything. That was everything. That was the very fabric of existence itself. The faces in the pool smiled at them. The faces in the pool loved them. The faces in the pool were them, and they were the faces, and there was no difference, no distance, no separation at all. The garden waits for you too, beloved traveler. Not in some distant land, not on the other side of mountains, but here, now, in the depths of your own being. The rings of remembering are within you. The pool of connection is within you. Everything the traveler found is already yours, has always been yours, will always be yours. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let yourself walk through your own garden. Let the memories rise. Let the forgetting become remembering. Let the separation become connection. You do not have to effort or strive. You only have to allow. You only have to let go. You only have to trust the process that is already unfolding, that has always been unfolding, that will continue to unfold whether you trust it or not. The faces of everyone you have ever loved are with you now. They have always been with you. They will always be with you. The connections you have made cannot be broken. The love you have shared cannot be lost. It is woven into the fabric of your being, part of who you are, part of what you will always be. Rest now in this web of connection. Feel the threads that link you to everyone and everything. Feel the love that flows through these threads, that has always flowed, that will always flow. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are held in a network of care and connection that spans all of existence, that includes all beings, that is the very nature of reality itself. Sleep now, connected one. Sleep in the garden of remembering. Sleep in the knowledge that you are loved, that you are held, that you are part of something vast and beautiful and eternal. The garden grows while you sleep. The connections deepen. The remembering continues. And when you wake, you will be more yourself than you have ever been. More connected than you have ever been. More home than you have ever been. Rest well. Dream deep. Remember who you are. The traveler did not know how long they stayed in the city of radiance. Time there did not move as it moved in the world they had left behind. Days might have been years, years might have been moments. It did not matter. What mattered was the deepening, the learning, the slow and beautiful process of becoming more fully what they had always been. But eventually, something shifted. A new feeling arose in the traveler's heart, not restlessness, not dissatisfaction, but something gentler. Something that felt like completion, like readiness, like the natural turning of a page to reveal the next chapter of a story that was far from over. They went to the tall being who had become their guide, their teacher, their friend in this place of light. They did not need to speak. The being already knew. You are ready to return, the being conveyed. The light you have found here is not meant to be kept. It is meant to be shared. The understanding you have gained is not for you alone. It is for everyone you will meet, everyone whose life will touch yours, everyone who is still walking the path you have walked. The traveler felt a moment of fear, the first fear they had felt since arriving in this place. Return to the world they had left. Return to the darkness, the confusion, the suffering that had driven them to seek in the first place. How could they bear it after experiencing this? The being smiled, and in that smile was infinite compassion, infinite understanding, infinite love. You will not lose what you have found, they said. The light is not outside you, it is what you are. Wherever you go, it goes with you. Whatever you face, it faces with you. You cannot leave it behind, because you cannot leave yourself behind. You are the light. You have always been the light. And now you know it. The traveler understood. The fear dissolved, replaced by something that felt like excitement, like anticipation, like the joy of a new adventure beginning. They had thought the journey was about arriving somewhere. Now they understood that the journey was about becoming someone who could carry the light into the darkness, someone who could share the understanding with those who were still seeking, someone who could be a beacon for others as others had been beacons for them. How do I return, they asked. The same way you came, the being replied, one step at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. The path is always there. You only have to walk it. The traveler left the city of radiance on a morning that felt like all mornings and no morning, a time that was every time and no time. The beings of the city gathered to see them off, their luminous forms arranged in patterns of blessing and farewell, their silent voices raised in a song of love and encouragement. The traveler walked through the garden one last time, touching the flowers, breathing the fragrant air, letting the memories of remembering settle deeper into their being. They walked past the pool where they had seen the faces of everyone they had ever loved, and they smiled, knowing that those faces would be with them always, that the connections would never be broken, that the love would never fade. They began the ascent back toward the pass, climbing the gentle slopes that led up from the luminous plain, feeling the light gradually thin around them as they rose, feeling the ordinary world begin to reassert itself. But the light did not disappear. It remained within them, a warmth in their chest, a glow behind their eyes, a presence that would never leave them no matter how far they traveled. The pass was as they had left it, a narrow corridor between peaks, a threshold between worlds. The traveler stood there for a moment, looking back at the radiant land below, then forward at the mountains and valleys that led back to the world they had known. Both directions were home now. Both directions were the journey. There was no leaving and no arriving, only the endless movement of existence exploring itself, knowing itself, loving itself through all its infinite forms. They began the descent. The journey back was different from the journey out. The traveler moved through the same landscapes, the rocky slopes, the sheltered bowls, the corridors of carved stone, but they saw them differently now. They saw the light in everything, the radiance that had always been there but that they had not had eyes to see. Every rock glowed with its own inner fire. Every plant pulsed with its own quiet life. Every breath of wind carried whispers of the same truth they had learned in the city of light. They passed through the hidden valley where they had spent so many peaceful days, and they felt the valley welcome them back, felt it recognize the change in them, felt it celebrate their transformation. They sat by the river one more time, watching the water flow, understanding now that the river had always been teaching them, that everything had always been teaching them. that the whole world was a school of awakening for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. They climbed out of the valley and descended through the silver-barked forest, past the ancient grove, along the paths that had first led them into the unknown. The journey that had taken months on the way out seemed to take only days on the way back, as if time itself was cooperating with their return, as if the world was eager to receive what they had to offer. And finally, one evening as the sun was setting, they saw it in the distance, the village, their village. The place they had left so long ago, the place they had thought they would never see again, the place that had once felt like a prison and now felt like an opportunity. They stood on the hill overlooking the village and watched the lights come on in the windows, watched the smoke rise from the chimneys, watched the tiny figures of people moving through the streets. These were their people. This was their home. Not because they had been born here, not because they had lived here, but because they had chosen to return, chosen to share what they had learned, chosen to be a light in this particular corner of the vast and beautiful world. The traveler walked down the hill and entered the village. The people did not recognize them at first. They had been gone too long, had changed too much. But slowly, as word spread, as faces turned toward them with wonder and disbelief, the recognition came. The traveler who had left. The seeker who had disappeared into the unknown. They had returned. The questions came in floods. Where had they been? What had they seen? What had they learned? The traveler answered as best they could, knowing that words could never capture the truth of their experience, knowing that the real teaching would happen not through what they said, but through what they were, through the light that now shone from their eyes, through the peace that now radiated from their presence. They did not try to convince anyone of anything. They did not preach or proselytize or push their understanding on those who were not ready to receive it. They simply lived. They simply loved. They simply were what they had become, and let that being speak for itself. Some people were drawn to them, sensing something different, something they wanted for themselves. To these people, the traveler offered guidance, offered companionship on the path, offered whatever help they could provide. Others were suspicious, threatened by the change, preferring the familiar darkness to the unfamiliar light. To these people, the traveler offered patience, offered compassion, offered the understanding that everyone awakens in their own time, that no one can be forced to see what they are not ready to see. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, the months into years. The traveler grew old in the village, but the light within them did not dim. If anything, it grew brighter, more radiant, more available to all who came seeking. And when the time came for them to leave their body, to continue the journey in whatever form came next, they did so with peace, with gratitude, with the knowledge that they had done what they came to do, that they had shared what they had been given to share, that the light would continue to shine through all the lives they had touched, spreading outward in ripples that would never end. This is not the end of the story. There is no end. The traveler's journey continues in forms we cannot imagine, in realms we cannot conceive. And your journey continues too, tonight, tomorrow, for all the days and nights of your life and beyond. You are the traveler. You have always been the traveler. Every step you have ever taken has been part of the journey. Every breath you have ever breathed has been part of the path. You are walking toward the light even now, even in this moment, even as you drift toward sleep. The city of radiance is not far away. It is here, now, in the depths of your own being. The garden of remembering is within you. The pool of connection is within you. Everything the traveler found is already yours, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be lived. Rest now, beloved traveler. Rest in the knowledge that you are on the path, that you have always been on the path, that you can never leave the path because the path is what you are. Rest in the light that shines within you, that has always shone, that will always shine. Tomorrow the journey continues. Tomorrow there will be new steps to take, new lessons to learn, new gifts to receive and share. But tonight there is only rest, only peace, only the deep healing sleep that prepares you for whatever comes next. You have come so far, you have learned so much, you have become so much more than you knew you could be. Be proud of yourself, be gentle with yourself, be patient with yourself as the journey continues to unfold. The light is with you, the light is in you, the light is you. Sleep now, Radiant One, sleep in peace, sleep in love, sleep in the eternal light that never fades, that never fails, that holds you always in its infinite embrace. The journey continues, the story goes on, and you are part of it now and forever, sleeping and waking, living and dying and living again. Rest well, dream deep, wake in light, and know that you are loved, know that you are held, know that you are home, always loved, always light. Sleep now, sleep well, sleep in peace. The end is the beginning is the end, and the journey never stops. Good night, beloved traveler. Good night.